Hello and welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and welcome to part one of our build of the Amati Endeavour in 1:80 scale. So this is the J-Class UK Challenger from the America's Cup of 1934, and doesn't she look glorious there? So we're going to be building this as laid out in the instructions. I'm not going to be modifying anything. I'm not going to be doing anything different. However, as we go through the build, I may well point out things that you could do differently if you wish to, that might enhance the model and dependent upon your modelling skills. Now, this is sort of like a hybrid kit. So it's a wooden ship kit, but it comes with a plastic hull. So it's a slightly different approach, and the idea is it's fairly simple for people to get to grips with building a wooden ship kit without some of the more technically challenging things like planking a hull. So I'm really interested to see how this comes together. So we're going to start and just turn the page, and on the first start of our page we've got a couple of nice images there of the completed build, and it says read carefully these instructions and consult the orientation drawings before starting assembly of the model. By that they mean the set of plans that comes in the kit. Check the contents of the kit using the list of materials and the drawings. So at the back of the instructions here there is a list of everything that should be in your kit. You can see I've already checked mine off and all is good. Some parts to be obtained from wooden strip, dowel or metallic bars must be cut to the specific measured. Keep the eventual remaining pieces for later utilization. So basically we're going to have to cut bits off various lengths of strip and wire and things that are in there, but we don't throw away because we're going to be keep revisiting those and cutting more bits off effectively. The wood support supplied in the kit can be used to support the model during assembly works. To avoid damaging the model during the assembly phases, we recommend covering the parts of the support that will enter contact with the model with some pieces of foam. Well, we will have a look at that in the next video. We'll deal with putting together the stand here that you can see. It is actually figure 22 in the instructions, which means it's dealt with on the very last page, but we'll do it so you've got somewhere to put your model while you're building it. So in this video we're going to be focused on figure 1. So that means we're going to be looking at the hull and looking at making the rudder. So figure 1, extract rudder 2 from the laser sheet, taper and round up the rear profile of the external edge, glue the rudder to the stern edge of the hull of the polystyrene. We recommend the use of CA glue. Okay, so that sounds simple enough, but actually before we do that there's something else that I think we need to do, so let's have a look at that. So when you look at this single piece hull they've given you, there's a little bit of cleanup needed. Now I think the instructions talk about cleaning this up later on, but there is something we can do right now, and that is to deal with the center seam. So from the process of making the parts, we've got a manufacturing seam which runs all the way down the middle past this little area here. We'll talk about that in a sec, and the full length all the way to the tip of the stern there. And although it might feel like it's very minor, and in this white plastic might be a little bit difficult to see, when we put paint on this hull it will become glaringly obvious and it will spoil the effect of your model a little bit. So the first thing we want to do is deal with removing that, and I'd like to do that before we stick the rudder on and prime, because the seam actually goes down where we're going to add the rudder. So I want to get rid of the seam first. We also have this little point here. This is where the connection was, where the plastic came in to the part, and it's been broken away. So we need to tidy that up as well. So this isn't very visible, this seam, and on this white plastic it's a little bit difficult to see. So what we're going to do is make the seam a bit more obvious, and for that we're going to need a Sharpie or a permanent marker. And what we're going to do is we're just going to draw a line over that seam, and you'll see how much more prominent that already is becoming, and that's what would happen if we put paint on it. So make sure you've got it over the seam the full length. You don't want any gaps in it. Doesn't matter if you wobble off, we'll be cleaning all the Sharpie up later. There we go. Okay, so that black line is what we now have to clear up. So a good way of cleaning this up is to use something like an emery board. But for the purposes of, or you could use some sandpaper. What you don't want is anything with too harsh a grit, because we don't want to create work for ourselves by putting more scrapes and gouges into the surface. What we're trying to do is actually make the surface more smooth ultimately, and there's a number of steps in doing that. But while we're taking the seam off, we don't want to be putting more scratches in that we then have to sand out. So you don't want the grit to be too harsh. What I'm going to do, just because I think it's going to be easier for you to see what's happening, is I'm going to use this glass file. But you can use a fairly low grit, like a 400 grit would be fine. And I'll show you basically what we're going to do. You're going to go along, and you can see how we can now see how that line has come away. And because we now have a wide white strip, that means we have taken the seam line down to the hull level. So I'm going to use this glass one so you can see what's happening underneath, hopefully. So as we take it down, we're taking off the raised seam, and then when the line gets wider, that means we've taken that seam all the way down. If you see here, if I just, where we've got that nub, you can see there's the white bit, which is the plastic, and then we've got like a really dark black line all the way around it. That means that the file isn't making contact with that, which means it's still higher than the rest of the surface. So that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to get rid of any evidence of the Sharpie, which means that we must, there we go, we must be level. Now, it could also be that there is ink got into that if there's a gouge in there, and that we're creating a problem. So run your finger over it. If it feels like it's smooth, then it probably is. So yeah, I would go with about a 400 grit. You can see how that has nicely sanded down, and then we can worry about perfection later, but you can see it's not a difficult job. And if you can still see Sharpie, you know you've not sanded it away. So there's a bit of black there. and we're just going to work our way along the whole length of this. It's really important that we get this area where the rudder's going to go nice and flat, and it's level on both sides. If we don't get it perfectly level, then you'll end up with a nice fit on one side and a bit of a gap on the other side, and we don't want that. That should be right. Okay, when you think you're done, like I think I am, then go and wash your hands, and we can rinse this under the sink, and if you need to, a little bit of dishwashing detergent, and you can wash this down and clean that up, and it'll get rid of all of this ink and any fingerprints. So I'm going to go and wash this, and then I'll come back to you. So with our hull seam removed and the hull washed, this is ready for being primed, and giving it a wash is a good idea because it gets rid of any grease or anything like that which might get in the way of putting our primer down. So we can put that to one side now and deal with forming the rudder. So we need to remove the rudder from its plywood frame, and to do that we're simply going to use a knife to cut through the tab. So there's one tab there and one tab there, and just make sure we've gone all the way through. There we go. And that should just plop out. So that is nicely removed. So first thing we want to do is to remove this little nub here and the same here, because that's going to get in the way of fit. We're going to be shaping this anyway, but we still want to make this flush first so that we're treating everything the same. So small flat file. There we go. Careful not to put a sink in by filing in one spot. Keep it. You'll notice that I was going way past it. You can see where I've gone way past it to keep it nice and level. And we need to do exactly the same on this side. Brilliant. Okay, now you can use the same file now to shape it, and what you want to basically do is create a nice rounded rudder, and as a guide we want to take this in to about this dark strip here on both sides, so that way you know that you've kept it sort of level. So if we take this material back to there, so there's no particular instruction for this, there's nothing on the plans. So start with taking off the sharp edge like so, and put a rounded corner on, and that's already starting to shape it. And then we need to take that material back. Now you don't need to use a tool this small. If you've got something bigger like this is a permanent sanding sheet, you can use that, or you can use sandpaper on a block, or whatever you've got that's abrasive that'll do that job. So I'm going to use this, which should be a fair bit quicker. Then when you've started taking it back and you're getting close to that edge, start rounding it off. And at this stage, we're still just roughing out the shape. There, and you can see how that is starting to gently curve in to that line. So we need it to be as even as possible all the way down the full length of the rudder. We need to be careful not to take anything off this edge, because that's what we're going to glue in to the hull. Okay, and then when you think that you've got it roughly done, then you can go to a bit of sandpaper or, again, an emery board and just fine shape it. Okay, so we need to do that on both sides, so I'll do it on the other side and then I'll come back to you when we look at the next step. So now we have rounded it up to this center line here. The last thing we need to do is just finish that rounding process. So I'm just using a small file for control here, and it's a case of just rounding it off and bringing it into the middle. And what we're looking for is a nice sort of rounded point. And at this moment in time, don't worry about blending it all in. We'll do that in a minute. Okay, and then when you've got it feeling like it's rounded off, we'll put some sandpaper down there and just finish the curve. But if we just bring it in with this, it does the bulk of the work for us. And we know it's closing in because we're starting to lose the laser burn, which is that dark colouring you can see. Okay, so now we can go in with a reasonably abrasive paper. This is an 80 grit, and just finish that off. And we just keep going at it until we're happy that we've got a nice graduated smooth shape. Oh, that just broke a little bit. So what we've done there is we've caught it while we're sanding and a little bit's breaking away. I'm going to try and keep that in. We'll glue that back in a minute. So I'm going to hold it there to stop it breaking. There we go. So I think I am happy with that. Looks fairly even on both sides. So what we're going to do now is we're now going to sand the full surface, which blends it in and it takes the coarse wood grain away. Now we don't want to do too much because we don't want to reduce the thickness at the back end, but we're just taking the grain out to make it smoother when we put paint on it. Okay, then when we've done that, we can start dropping down the grits a little bit. And this time I want to go in a different direction because that's going to take out all the little scratches that we put in, smoothing it off. We went in that direction. Now we're going to go across that. All the time, the aim is to get the surface smoother. Okay, and we keep dropping down so that we are getting this to a point where it's nice, smooth wood, and you're not going to be able to tell the difference between the plastic part of the hull and the wood part of the hull when we put some primer down. We'll just keep dropping down the grits until we're happy we've got a nice, smooth finish. There we go. That is our rudder nicely shaped. Now let's deal with this. So that's breaking away. We want to stop that from happening. So we need to get some CA glue. So I'm using CA or super glue because it's very quick setting. And that's what we need for this. And the glue should make the break nice and strong. So I'm just going to put a little bit with a bit of wire into that gap there, and we'll close it together and just hold it into place. There we go. So that is glued in now. I'm happy with that. And we'll just leave it a minute or two just to make sure it's doubly hard, and then we can sand over that a little bit and make sure it's nice and smooth and not noticeable when we come to prime. So what we're trying to do right now is get the surface of the hull ready for priming, and then once we prime we'll be able to see if there's any issues that we need to resolve. Right, there we go. So that is nice. I'm just going to sand away any excess glue, and I'm going to clean this up now. We'll get rid of all this dust and all the tools, and then we'll test fit it on the hull. So we can now get our rudder and test fit it against the hull. And what we can see is actually the top of the rudder here is sitting proud, and we don't want that. So if you can see, there's probably about 1 millimeter there. So to sort that, what we want to do is take the millimeter off this flat edge so that the whole thing sits a bit lower, rather than trying to reshape the top section. That would just be too much work. So let's just do that. So it's easier to do that on some form of sanding paper that's totally flat. And if you go around in a sort of circular motion, that usually means that you keep it nice and even. If you go side to side, you could take the edges off and make it slightly curved, and we don't want to do that. We want to keep it nice and flat. So let's try that. Well, that's definitely better. And what I can see is we've got a little bit of a slope there that we need to just sort out. We want no gap at the top there. So just going to take that back. Right, so that's not catching my finger now. And it's nice and flat at the bottom. So I'm happy that that rudder is as we want it, I think. I do have, actually, as I look at this, I do have a little bit of a lip overhanging there. So it might be a little bit large that way as well. So let's just have a look at the plan and double check it's not supposed to have a hangover. So when we look at the plan, we can see the profile is totally smooth. So we know that the overhang that we've got here, which is a good couple of millimeters, is more than what we want. So we've got to take some material out of this flat edge as well. And again, try and keep it flat. So same process. It might look like I'm going backwards and forwards, but I am doing a slight circular motion as we do that. So right, I will do it off camera because it's going to shake the camera quite a bit, this. When you're happy that you've got your fit right, and that is now looking good, we can just tidy up that edge with a bit of fine sandpaper and make sure we've got no rough edges. So we've checked that it fits properly at the top and that we've got no lip, and at this edge here that we've got no lips, and now we've got to check that we've not got a lip in this direction. And as I run my fingers over it, I can feel that I have. So we want it to be no thicker than this here. So there is actually a taper. When you look at this, it's thick here and then it's tapering down to a thin point. So we need to continue that on with the rudder. So here I can feel it's okay, and then right at the top I can feel it's tapering. So we need to just mark that with a pencil and get our point for the start of our taper. So as I put this on here like that, and it's smooth to the touch on both sides, so I know I've got it centered. There's a taper starting about there. So I need to mark that on the other side as well. About there. So same process as with shaping this edge. We need to now just take that down a little bit. So again, I'm going to use just a little file and reduce that material down a little bit. Now that might mean that we've got to do a little bit more sanding to put the curve back in, but it's important that we get this right, otherwise it will look wrong when we paint it. And all you need to do is keep going back and checking it until you're happy that you've got it right. When you can feel that it feels about right, you can then go in with your sandpaper, smooth it off, blend it in, finish it off, and make sure it's nice and smooth, just like we've done before. It needs to be nice and gradual, no steps. So once we're happy that we've got it the right shape and that it's not got any lumps, and we can pass our hand over it, our fingers over it I should say, nice and smoothly. Just go over it and make sure it's nice and smooth, that you've got no burrs or anything like that. And then we are ready to glue that into place. So we're going to use some CA again to do that. So let's do that. So our best way of putting the glue on is to apply it to the wooden part. And what you can actually do is you can actually wet the part if you like, because super glue bonds better to wet glue than it does dry, although I am doing it dry here. So putting it on all the surfaces, and we don't want to too much that it oozes out and tidies up, but we can sand it back if it does. So we've got super glue on there. We need to make sure that we get it nicely aligned first time. And that we're happy with the position. And then we can let that bond. There you go. So I was using 5-second CA there, which gives you a little brief moment to manipulate it and make sure that you're happy with its position. There we go. Now don't worry if you get any staining from the glue, because that'll all disappear when we paint this up. So yeah, that completes our first step, figure 1 in the instructions. So in the next episode we'll actually do figure 22 and build the stand, so we've got something we can put this on as we work our way through it. So I hope that was useful. Thank you for looking in. You enjoy your modelling, and I'll see you very soon. Hi, and thanks for watching. You can support the channel by hitting the like button, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you don't miss any content that I put out. Model Kit Stuff is a self-funded channel, and I don't do membership or Patreon or buy me a coffee. So if you'd like to further donate to the channel and ensure the cameras keep rolling and the content keeps coming, then you can consider making a donation through my PayPal. You will find a link to that in the text below. You enjoy your modelling, and I'll see you soon.